shackles in the dark. The tunnels were always dark. The only light came from the glow of burning torches and the faint shimmer of poisonous crystals hidden deep inside the rock. The air was heavy, thick with dust that choked every breath. For the slaves, every inhale felt like swallowing knives. Among them was a girl, thin and fragile, her skin marked with scars and burns from years of hard labor. Her hands trembled as she lifted a pickaxe, striking again and again against the stone wall. She was not alone. Hundreds of others worked beside her, chained together, their backs bent under the weight of endless pain. She had no name anymore. The guards had stolen that from her years ago. To them, she was nothing but a number, a slave to dig until her body broke. Every day was the same. The shriek of whips, the cries of the weak, the endless clang of metal against stone. And when the day ended, they were dragged back to cages, thrown scraps of food barely enough to survive. She lived in silence, afraid to speak, afraid even to dream. But deep inside, there was something left. A faint spark she tried to kill but could not. A memory of freedom, long buried, long forgotten. Sometimes when she closed her eyes, she saw the sky. She wondered if it was still there above all this darkness, or if it had only been a dream. The overseers were cruel creatures, tall and armored, their voices like grinding metal. They treated the slaves worse than animals, striking them down for the smallest mistake. That night, when the girl dropped a crystal shard, a guard lifted his whip. She braced herself for the strike, but it never came. Someone moved between her and the whip. A figure, broad-shouldered, scarred but standing, tall. The guard snarled and lashed out, and the figure took the blow across his back. The girl froze. No one ever defied the overseers. No one dared. The guard hissed and shoved the figure aside. The girl finally saw his face in the dim light. It was not alien like the others. It was human. She had heard whispers in the cages. Rumors, carried like wind. A human was taken. A human works among us now. But she had never believed it. Humans were rare, far away, always fighting against empires like this. How could one of them end up here? Yet here he was. The guards shouted, forcing the slaves back to work. The human bent to pick up the shard she had dropped and pressed it into her trembling hands. His voice was low, rough but kind. "Don't let them break you." Her lips parted, but no words came out. She did not know what to say. For the rest of the night, she kept stealing glances at him. He worked harder than anyone else, sweat running down his face, muscles straining as he smashed at the rock. But there was something different about him. While the other slaves moved like broken shells, this human moved with fire, with purpose. When the slaves were herded back to their cages, the girl sat in her corner hugging her knees. She tried to push his words from her mind, but they echoed again and again. "Don't let them break you." She wanted to laugh at the foolishness of it. Didn't he see? They were already broken. The guards had stolen everything, their names, their freedom, their future. There was nothing left to save. And yet, when she closed her eyes, she remembered the way he had stood in front of her, the way he had taken the blow without hesitation. No one had ever done that for her. Not once in all her years in the mines. The next day, she woke with dread, expecting another endless cycle of pain. But when the torches flared and the slaves were dragged into the tunnels, she saw him again. He lifted his pickaxe with the same fire in his eyes, and when he caught her looking, he gave her the faintest smile. It was small, almost nothing. But to her it felt like the first light in a long, endless night. Still, she tried to kill the feeling. Hope was dangerous. Hope got you punished. Hope got you killed. She had seen it before. Slaves who dared to believe only to end up in the dirt. But no matter how hard she tried, she could not erase the sound of his voice. In the shadows of the tunnels, where chains rattled and overseers growled, the girl realized something had changed. It was small, fragile, barely alive. But it was there. For the first time in years, she felt it. Hope. The spark of rebellion. The days in the mines never changed, but something inside her had shifted. The girl no longer felt completely numb. She kept glancing at the human, searching for that fire in his eyes. He carried himself differently, like chains could not touch his spirit. When the guards barked orders, he moved, but not like the others. He was not broken. He still had a choice in the way he breathed, the way he looked at the world, and that frightened her because the overseers would notice. That night, as she stumbled carrying a heavy sack of crystal shards, her legs gave way. She collapsed on the ground, dust rising around her. A guard stormed forward, whip raised high. Before the strike landed, the human was there again. He crouched beside her, sliding an arm under her shoulders, helping her stand. "Get up," he whispered, his voice steady. "Don't let them see you weak." The whip cracked across his back instead. The sound echoed through the tunnels, sharp and cruel. The girl flinched, but the human didn't cry out. His jaw tightened, his body shuddered, but his eyes stayed fierce. He guided her to her feet, pressing the sack back into her arms. She stared at him, shocked. No one ever shielded another slave. No one dared. Yet he did it twice now. When the guards turned away, the girl whispered, her voice trembling, "Why? Why do you help me?" His answer was simple. "Because you're still alive, and as long as you're alive, you're not beaten." The words hit her harder than any whip. For the next few nights, she found herself working beside him whenever she could. They spoke little, only in broken whispers when the guards weren't watching. But every word carried weight. One night, he slipped her a small piece of bread he had saved. Her stomach growled with hunger, but she hesitated. Sharing food was forbidden. If caught, both would be punished. Or worse. "Eat," he said firmly. "Strength is the only weapon we have." Her hands shook as she accepted it. The dry bread crumbled on her tongue, but it tasted like a feast. For the first time, she felt gratitude so strong it burned in her chest. But gratitude was dangerous too. It tied her to him, and that meant danger. The overseers had begun to notice. Their glowing eyes lingered longer on the human. Whispers spread among the slaves. Some admired him, some feared him. "He doesn't bow," they muttered. "He will bring death to us all." And then, the night came when punishment fell. The guards dragged the human into the center of the cavern. His hands were bound, his face lit by torchlight. The slaves were forced to watch as an overseer raised a shock staff. "You defy too often," the overseer hissed. "You think yourself unbroken. We will break you." The staff cracked with energy, striking the human's chest. He fell to his knees, his body convulsing with pain. The girl's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to look away, but she couldn't. The overseer struck him again and again. Each blow should have shattered him. But when the human finally lifted his head, his voice cut through the silence. "You can break my body," he rasped, "but you'll never break my will." The cavern went silent. The slaves stared, wide-eyed, terrified. Even the guards paused. No one had ever spoken like that. The girl felt something explode inside her chest. She had lived so long in silence and fear, but his words carved through it like fire through ice. The guards beat him until he collapsed, blood staining the dirt. Then they dragged him back to the cages and left him broken on the ground. The girl crawled to his side after the guards left. His breathing was ragged, his face pale, but his eyes opened when she touched his arm. "You're a fool," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "Maybe," he murmured weakly, "but fools can change the world." Her throat tightened. She wanted to tell him it was hopeless, that the mines were endless, that there was no escape, no future. But she couldn't, because for the first time, she believed him. That night, as the slaves lay in silence, the girl did not close her eyes. She kept replaying his words. "You're alive. You're not beaten. Fools can change the world." And when morning came, something inside her was different. She was still chained, still broken, but for the first time she felt a spark of rebellion. Escape in the shadows. The human should have been broken after the beating. Most slaves never stood again once the overseers finished with them. But the next day, when the chains dragged them back into the tunnels, he walked beside her. His steps were slow, his back scarred and bleeding, but his eyes still burned with defiance. The girl could not stop staring. She whispered, afraid the guards might hear. "Why don't you give up? It would be easier." He glanced at her, his voice low but steady. "Because if I give up, they win. And if they win, none of us will ever be free." The word struck her like thunder. Free. She had not heard it spoken in years. It sounded impossible, like a myth from a forgotten world. That night, while the others collapsed into exhausted silence inside the cages, the human leaned close to her. His voice was little more than a breath. "I know a way out." Her eyes widened. Fear clenched her heart. Escape? That's death. No one survives. "Not if we're careful," he said. "There are tunnels above the mines, abandoned shafts. They lead to the surface. I've mapped them in my head." She shook her head, violently. "You'll get us killed. You'll get me killed." His gaze was steady. "Then stay here and die slowly. But I'd rather die fighting for freedom than live as their slave." Her chest tightened. She wanted to call him mad. She wanted to turn away. But deep inside, she knew he was right. Every day here was death anyway, only slower, crueler. For the next few days, he began to act differently. He timed the guards' patrols, studied the chains, watched the torches. He whispered his plan to her piece by piece, hiding it in casual words so no one else could hear. The girl was terrified, yet she followed his whispers, memorizing the steps against her will. Then, one night, the chance came. The overseers grew, lazy after a long shift. The torches in one corner burned low. The human pressed against the wall, chains rattling softly, and gave her a single look. Now, her heart pounded as he slipped his wrists from loosened cuffs. She had never noticed how he had been working the lock for days. He reached for her chains, working them free with a shard of crystal. The sound of metal snapping felt louder than thunder. "Run," he whispered. They moved like shadows, creeping through the dim tunnels. The girl's legs trembled with fear, but the human's hand guided her forward. Every corner felt like a trap. Every echo made her flinch. Behind them, the rattle of chains gave them away. A guard shouted. The alarm blared through the cavern. The slaves stirred in their cages, some crying out, some pressing themselves against the bars. The girl's breath hitched as she heard boots pounding the tunnels. "They're coming," she whispered. "Then we move faster," the human said. They ran through narrow shafts, climbing over jagged rocks, slipping through cracks barely wide, enough to squeeze through. The girl's lungs burned, but the thought of falling back into chains drove her onward. At last, they reached a massive iron door blocking their path. The girl froze, despair crashing over her. "It's sealed," she gasped. "We can't." The human slammed his fist against the lock, eyes blazing. "Nothing is sealed forever." He jammed the crystal shard into the mechanism, twisting until sparks flew. The sound of boots grew louder. Shadows flickered at the edge of the torchlight. The guards were almost there. The girl clutched his arm. "We'll be caught." He looked at her, his voice steady despite the danger. "If we stop now, we lose everything. Do you want to go back? Do you want to die in chains?" Her chest heaved. She thought of the endless years in darkness, of the whips, the hunger, the silence. Then she thought of his words. "Freedom. No," she whispered fiercely. "Never again." She grabbed another shard from the ground and helped him force the lock. Sparks rained across their hands, burning their skin, but they didn't stop. The boots were only seconds away. The guards' voices echoed, shouting commands. With a final snap, the lock shattered. The door groaned open, revealing a dark tunnel beyond. The human pulled her through just as the first guards appeared. Energy blasts lit the walls, scorching the stone. One shot nearly hit her shoulder, but the human shoved her aside, taking the brunt of the shock against his arm. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself forward. "Go!" The tunnel swallowed them in darkness, their footsteps pounding. the shouts of the guards chasing them deeper into the unknown. The girl's heart raced, fear and hope battling inside her. For the first time in her life, she was running toward something she had never dared believe in: freedom. But the path ahead was long, and the hunters were close. And in the shadows above, something far worse than guards was waiting. Chains shattered. The tunnel twisted upward, tighter and steeper with every step. The girl's lungs burned, her legs threatening to give out, but the human never slowed. His grip on her hand was iron, dragging her forward even as the sounds of pursuit thundered behind them. Blasts of energy lit the stone, the heat scorching her back. The guards were relentless, their heavy boots pounding closer. The girl stumbled, her foot catching on a jagged rock. She fell hard to the ground. Pain exploded in her knees. "Get up!" the human hissed, pulling her up before she could cry out. "Don't stop. Not now." But when they rounded the bend, her breath froze. A massive patrol squad blocked the tunnel, ahead. Their armor gleamed in the dim light, shock staves humming with power. Behind them, alien hounds growled, their eyes glowing red in the dark. The girl's heart sank. "We're trapped." The human's jaw tightened. "Then we break through." Before she could protest, he charged. His chain, still half bound around his wrist, swung like a weapon. It smashed into the first guard's helmet with a sickening crack. The overseer stumbled back, sparks flying. The girl stood frozen, terror rooting her feet. She had never seen anyone fight back, not like this. The human fought with desperate fury, every strike fueled by years of rage. He was only one man, yet for a moment it felt like he carried the strength of an army. But numbers mattered. More guards surged forward, surrounding him. A staff crackled against his ribs, knocking him to his knees. "Stop!" she screamed, her voice raw. Her body trembled, torn between fear and something new, something rising inside her. She could not watch him fall, not after he had carried her this far. Her eyes darted to the ground. A shard of crystal lay by her feet, sharp as a blade. Her hands shook as she picked it up. "You're alive. You're not beaten." His words echoed in her mind. The guard nearest her turned, raising his staff. She moved before she could think. With a cry that tore from the deepest part of her chest, she drove the shard into the guard's side. The overseer howled, collapsing in shock. The girl's hands were slick with blood, her breath ragged. Terror and strength mixed in her veins, like fire. For the first time she had fought back. The human's eyes met hers through the chaos. Despite the pain on his face, he gave a fierce smile. "That's it. Fight." Together they turned on the guards. The human ripped a staff from one's grip, its energy burning in his hands as he struck. The girl slashed with her shard, wild, but determined. Each movement felt like tearing the chains from her soul. The tunnel echoed with shouts and the clash of steel. The hounds lunged, but the human swung his stolen staff in a wide arc, driving them back. The girl kicked one aside, surprising even herself with the strength in her legs. More guards rushed in, their weapons crackling. The human's arm bled, his body battered, but he stood tall, unyielding. The girl fought at his side, fear drowned by something stronger. Hope. With a final strike, the last guard fell. The tunnel was littered with broken bodies, smoke rising from the weapons scattered on the ground. The girl stood trembling, her chest heaving. Her hands dripped with blood, hers and theirs. She had never imagined herself capable of such defiance. She felt both sick and alive. The human placed a hand on her shoulder, steady and firm. "You see now? You were never weak. They only made you believe you were." Her throat tightened. For years she had lived in silence, a shadow in chains. Now, in this moment, she felt something break open inside her, something that could never be caged again. But before relief could settle, a deafening roar shook the tunnel. The ground trembled, dust falling from the ceiling. The girl's eyes widened in horror. From deeper in the mines, a colossal beast emerged. Its body was armored with jagged plates, its eyes burning like molten fire. The overseers had unleashed their final weapon, the beast that guarded the surface exits. The human tightened his grip on the staff, his voice grim but steady. So that's what they were hiding. The girl's heart pounded, fear threatening to choke her again. But when she looked at the human, she remembered the strength she had just discovered. She clenched the shard tighter in her hand, her voice shaking but firm. Then we fight. Together. The beast roared again, shaking the tunnel walls. Chains and fear no longer held her. For the first time, she was ready to fight for her life and for her freedom. The gift of freedom. The tunnel shook with the monster's roar. Dust rained from the ceiling and the air filled with the smell of smoke and stone. The beast crawled forward, its armored body scraping against the walls. Its massive claws struck, sparks as they dragged across the rock. The girl's legs trembled, but she refused to step back. Not anymore. The human gripped his stolen staff, its glow flickering in his bleeding hands. His voice was low, steady, even as the ground shook beneath them. "Stay behind me." "No," she said firmly, her voice surprising even herself. "I fight too." The beast lunged. The tunnel thundered as its bulk filled the space, jaws lined with molten teeth snapping down. The human shoved her aside, swinging the staff with all his strength. The strike landed against the beast's jaw, sending a burst of energy that shook the tunnel. The monster reeled back, bellowing in rage. The girl scrambled to her feet, clutching her crystal shard. Her heart pounded as she darted to the beast's side, striking at the gaps between its armored plates. The shard bit deep and the creature howled. "Again!" the human shouted. They moved together. He struck high with the staff, blinding it, with bursts of energy while she darted low, stabbing between its armor. The tunnel shook with every blow. The beast fought with fury, claws tearing at the stone, tail smashing through walls. At one moment, the beast's claw raked across the human's chest, throwing him to the ground. Blood sprayed and he groaned in pain. "No," the girl cried. Rage burned through her fear. She grabbed the fallen staff, the energy burning her hands, and with a scream she drove it into the beast's eye. The monster shrieked, thrashing violently, stone collapsing all around them. She clung to the weapon, forcing it deeper until the beast's movement slowed. Finally, with one last roar, it collapsed to the ground, the tunnel shaking with its fall. Silence followed, broken only by the sound of her ragged breaths. The girl collapsed beside the human, dropping the staff. Her body shook, her hands raw and bloody. She stared at him in horror. He coughed, blood staining his lips, but his eyes opened. You fought like fire," he rasped, a faint smile on his face. Her eyes blurred with tears. "Don't talk, please. You saved me. You saved all of us." He shook his head weakly. "No, you saved yourself. That's the gift of freedom. No one can give it to you. You take it." Her chest ached with emotion. She pressed her hand against his wound, desperate to stop the bleeding. "We made it this far. You're not dying. Here, not now." The tunnel behind them groaned, rocks crumbling as the weight of the beast's fall tore the ceiling apart. Light spilled through a crack above. Real light, bright and pure. The surface. Her breath caught in her throat. She had almost forgotten what light looked like. For years she had only known the dark, the poison, the chains. But now it was there, so close she could almost touch it. "Look," she whispered, shaking his shoulder. "We're almost free." He groaned, pushing himself to his feet with her help. Step by step they climbed the broken rocks, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. The crack widened as they pushed through, and then, for the first time in years, she felt fresh air on her face. The night sky stretched above them, endless and filled with stars. Cool wind brushed against her skin, carrying the scent of grass and earth. She stumbled forward, dropping to her knees in the dirt, tears streaming down her face. The human sank beside her, staring up at the stars with tired eyes. "Beautiful, isn't it?" She nodded, her voice breaking. "I thought I'd ever see it again." He leaned back, closing his eyes. "Freedom is worth everything, even this." She turned to him, shaking her head. "No, Not even freedom is worth losing you. Her words trembled, but they were true. For the first time, someone had shown her she was more than a slave. More than a number. And she could not lose him now. The stars shimmered above as she whispered, "I was nothing. You gave me hope. You gave me life." His hand found hers, weak but steady. "You gave yourself life. Don't forget that." They sat, together in silence, watching the sky. The mines still roared behind them, overseers surely hunting even now, but none of that mattered in this moment. For the first time in her life, she was free. And for the first time in his, he was not fighting alone. The night stretched on, carrying them toward an uncertain future. But whatever came next, they would face it together, because chains had shattered and hope had risen.